Hi, my name is Coach Amber, and welcome to the Meet RX Success Story podcast. Today we have a special guest with us, Mike Callicrate, and he's going to tell us about his story of how a meat-based diet has improved his health. Hi, Mike.
Hey, good morning, Amber. Happy to be here. You know, I grew up in a family of 8 kids in Evergreen, Colorado. My dad grew up on a farm as part of a farm family, and so he brought everything to 5 acres south of Evergreen that you could do on 5 acres, from livestock to growing our gardens, and we butcher our own chickens. And I had my own little group of sheep. My brother had turkeys. So 8 kids. It was a wonderful upbringing. But one of the things that when you have 8 kids is in a tight budget, you know, as a child, you know, I drank Carnation instant milk. I ate margarine instead of butter. I mean, back then they said, well, this is healthier, right? It's healthier. You should be eating, you know, dairy isn't that healthy. You should be eating margarine. And you know, it's all just the big lie of industrially produced food, which I grew up in. I grew up in that era. And so my little brother, probably that was 9 years younger, was probably ate better, because now that with me out of the house and a bunch of my other siblings out of the house, they had a little more money to buy better food. And so he actually got to drink real milk, which, you know, he ended up taller than me. Not saying that's the reason, but I'm just saying he might have had a little better level of nutrition. And so anyway, I never really knew about, you know, the difference between healthy food and the other food that I'd been eating. Although we did eat, you know, a lot of the stuff we produced on our own place, from the garden to the chickens and that sort of thing. And then what was really great when I was younger is I got to spend some of my summer time in Fort Collins, Colorado on a diversified farm that my cousins owned. And so, boy, there's where you got to drink real milk and real cream and you know, food that came right from their farm. I mean, I went to the 4-H fair with my cousins and learned a lot about that. And of course, my father's family and my grandma and granddad on his side were real true farmers, and they had one of the most beautiful gardens in West Denver when they finally retired. And you could go there and always have good food. It was out of the freezer, it was out of the pantry. They canned a lot of things, and it just tasted so good. But when I was at home in Evergreen, you know, we didn't get to eat at that level. And so anyway, I went to college and studied animal science and got into agriculture, and it was all about industrial ag. You know, how do you raise them cheaper and faster and all of that. And then along the way, I figured it out. I figured out that I was part of really a fool's game called industrial agriculture, and decided I'm going to seek out a different pathway, one that's healthier for the planet, more humane for the animals, and healthier for people who eat what I produce as a farmer and a rancher. And it so happened I was in Minneapolis at the Acres Conference, which is an old group of one of the original sustainable farming groups in the country. Charles Walter started it, and he's had a really big influence on me in some of the books that he's written. But that year I was presenting at the Acres Conference, and I was presenting my view of the world around meat packer concentration and problems in the market and that sort of thing, and really elevating the importance that if you want good food, just give farmers a living income and they'll darn sure produce it for you. And so when I was there and checking in and registering, I saw a little promotion piece on Sally Fallon, who I had never heard of or seen before. And the title of her talk was "Butter is a Health Food." And I thought, man, a treat at my house when I was growing up as a kid was having real butter. And even more, a bigger treat was real whipping cream. I mean, that was just off the chart. I mean, it's Christmas. We're going to have whipping cream on our dessert, right? And so I go to Sally's talk, and she was just right ahead of me. So I was going on right after her. And she presented, and it was amazing. There was like 1,100 people in the room. And when it was over, I was really, really impressed and really moved by what she had to say. But I didn't get to meet her or talk to her. Of course, she was swarmed with all kinds of attendees wanting to know more. But when I got home, I sent her a note and I said, Sally, during your talk at Acres, there were 2 major applauses, and I started both of them. And when you were done talking, I was not done listening. And she says, wow, that's nice. And she said, she lives in DC. And she said, if you're ever in DC, would you just let me know and I'll have you out for dinner? And so, wow, what a great opportunity. And so I was in DC not that long afterwards. And a friend of mine, Mary Hendrickson, who's been a real big advocate of the food circles and healthy food and, and fair markets and all that stuff. We were there at the same conference. And so Mary and I got invited out to Sally's house for dinner. And I mean, it was liver soup that didn't taste like liver. It was Alaskan salmon. It was fermented, everything fermented stuff. Anything you could ferment, we had that. I mean, it was, and of course the dessert was like peaches and with real whipped cream stacked about 4 inches high. It was just an unbelievable experience to sit down and have dinner with this amazing lady. And so I really started changing things. And I bought the book of Sally, the Sally Fallon cookbook. And I bought I just bought all the information that I could around this Weston A. Price approach. And Weston A. Price was really big on protein, on meat, on real food, whether it's cream or eggs or raw milk or whatever it may be. And, Weston A. Price was a dentist that traveled the world, and the healthiest cultures that he discovered around the world were those cultures that ate meat. And never did he find healthy people that ate processed food. And so even some of the oldest tribes and people who were traditional in their diets, whenever they were subjected to the industrial food, whether it be McDonald's or any of the highly processed hydrogenated vegetable oil, high fructose corn syrup, they all got sick. And he wrote about that in his book. And so I got to reading that kind of stuff, and I really became an advocate for Sally Fallon and her work and the Weston A. Price Institute. And so I just shifted everything that I did more to that better way of producing food and better eating. And so I've now transitioned to a diet that is mostly meat. I eat meat at almost every meal. I eat a lot of eggs. We produce them ourselves. And our chickens are all part of our composting operation. So they work out there at our cattle operation. And they're kind enough to leave a lot of eggs behind for us to eat. And I drink raw milk every day. I drink a glass of raw milk that's produced just east of Colorado Springs. Animals are fed all organic, clean and healthy feed ingredients. And so, I find that the more meat that I eat, the better I feel and the more fit I am. And I don't have to go crazy working out. I can stay fit with some basic good exercise, and I don't have to overly exert. And I'm 68 years old now. And so I'm not in a position that I can just wear my joints out, going to the Y and putting an hour on the treadmill. I'm much better off watching my diet and controlling my weight through diet. And what I've found, and I think has been proven, is it's not just meat, it's fat. We need a very high level of fat in our diet, but it has to be the right kind of fat. It has to be healthy fat, not hydrogenated vegetable oils, which we've been sold as like the margarine of years ago as a healthier food. And it's just a lie. It's just a flat out lie. And so, many of the customers that we have at Ranch Foods Direct want higher fat. And in fact, I read Kate Shanahan's book this last fall on deep nutrition, where she talks about eating more meat, including organ meats, fermented foods, and then more of the keto vegetables, like the broccoli and the cauliflower and in many of those kind of keto vegetables. So I really kind of follow that diet. In fact, we even put together a blend. We have a ground beef blend that is about a 70-30, 75-25, a lean to fat ratio that includes 20% organ meats. So it's got liver and heart, but it's just at that level that you can't really taste it. You got to have a trained palate to think there's liver in there. But wow, is it healthier? And you know, it's great for mothers who want to get more nutrition into their children. I mean, more dense nutrition into their children. And you know what? If they can taste the liver, put it in their tacos. But you know, I grew up on liver too, and I happen to love liver and onions. So I never reject an offer of liver or liver and onions, especially what Sally Fallon did in that liver soup that we had for dinner that night. It was just fantastic and delicious. So yeah, as I've shifted more towards a meat diet, I feel better. I'm more productive. You know, you don't need the afternoon nap. You just got a much better, more level energy throughout the day.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that story. That is really great. You touched on a little bit of how you're feeling better and et cetera, but were you having any health issues before you started moving more meat-based? Were you having any issues, maybe like high blood pressure, maybe some extra weight gain, anything like that?
You know, I've never really been unhealthy, and I take no drugs whatsoever. So I don't have that story of being unhealthy and now I'm healthy, but I wasn't as healthy as I am now. And I went through a time, but I've always worked too. So, you know, throughout my life, I've always had a project where I was doing something that I could exert. And when I got a little bit older, after I built my second feedlot, which took a lot of effort and kept me in great shape, I sort of transitioned from labor to management. And as I made the transition from labor to management, now what's going on here? You start picking up some extra pounds and you don't like it. And that can be taken care of with diet and just a minimal amount of exercise. You can get rid of those extra pounds. So that's when you really need to watch that diet. And if you don't catch it, if you are living an active lifestyle, if you do enough labor that you stay in better shape, and you make the transition to management and you don't change your diet, you're going to put on extra pounds. And that is when you start seeing the elevated blood pressure. That's when you start seeing some buildup of calcium in your heart and arteries and carotid artery and all of that. And that's when you are at higher and higher risk of heart disease. And so changing your diet towards a more meat-centered diet as you change from labor to management is, I think, very critical. You've got to back off the carbs. You simply got to try to reduce those in your diet as much as you can. And that's what I do today.
I could not agree with you more. Absolutely. I've had 40 years of experience struggling with weight and health issues. So, and it wasn't until I, got on the keto diet and then merged into a meat-based diet that, it's night and day how I feel, not just about myself, but health-wise. So I totally agree with you. You did mention a little bit about what you eat in general. Could you take us through a typical day? Like, what do you eat? Do you eat 3 meals a day? Do you have snacks? What do you do in a typical day?
So typically what I'll do, and if I'm in Colorado Springs, is I wake up and I drink a big glass of raw milk, and it will have an inch of cream on top. And of course, I'll shake the jug a little bit and I'll pour that glass of milk. And actually, the jar has more like 2 inches of cream on top. But I drink that. So if I know I'm going to be able to get home for lunch, or if I know I'm going to be able to eat at Luis's little taco trailer and have carnitas for lunch, which are a lot more meat than taco shell, I will not eat breakfast. And then when I get home at night, I eat something that's meat centered. And it might be a little sirloin steak with some asparagus on the side, or it might be broccoli or some sort of a keto type vegetable. that I'll eat at night. And that's it. I go to bed and I try to eat early. I want to be eating around, I'd like to be sitting at the table at 6:30 Mountain Time. And that way I don't go to bed full. And so that would be my diet. Now this morning, I didn't do that. This morning I had 2 eggs and that same glass of milk. And so these are eggs that I produce on our farm. And so then I know I'm not going to make it home for lunch. And so I won't have anything until I get home tonight. So yeah, and if you can just back off, we all eat way too much. If you just don't eat as much, it's important. But here's where the problem is a high carb diet does not satisfy your hunger. And so you eat more and more. If you eat a high protein, fat is so critical. You got to have fat. If you eat some fat, and that's what I get out of that raw milk. If you have a high fat diet, you just simply are not hungry. You're just not hungry. And there goes the weight. It goes away. And people say, well, it costs more. It just costs more to eat meat. No, it doesn't. It doesn't, because you don't eat as much as you would on processed food diets. It does not cost more. Plus, when you factor in the medical benefits of eating well and the reduced performance of not feeling good and the elimination of the doctor bills, you're in so much better shape. And so I really try to encourage people not just to eat meat, but to eat well-raised meat from well-raised, well-cared for animals that have also eaten well. And so that's what I really push people to do, is just don't go out and buy the cheapest meat you can find. Because I would honestly, if it wasn't for the meat that I produce and meat that I know other people produce that fit my idea of well-raised animals, I would be a vegetarian. You cannot eat what industrial agriculture is producing and like it. Not saying you might have to once in a while, but boy, if you know the way animals are raised in the industrial model, you can't support that. But you don't have to eat it. You can buy meat from people who do a good job, and like Will Harris at White Oak Pastures and Greg Gunthorpe at Gunthorpe Farms, and our company, and there's a lot of others out there as well. And hopefully there'll be more in the future if we support them.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I'm not going to lie, the cream you're talking about, oh my goodness, that sounds so good on a glass of milk. I'd be having a spoon eating the cream on the top of that. That is my obsession right now. And
Yeah.
I've gone too far. I'm a little bit addicted to it. But unfortunately, I have never actually had raw milk or raw cream, I guess you would call it. I've never had the opportunity to have that. And I keep hearing about it. I'm trying to just cut out dairy altogether, but I'm very curious. So I'm going to have to make it a point to find a place like what you're talking about and try that out. So
Well, that was
thank
one
you
of the
for
real
mentioning
gifts
that.
of Sally Fallon's friendship was introducing me to raw milk, which I drank at my cousin's farm when I was growing up as a kid. But when you pasteurize and homogenize milk, you basically ruin it. And this idea that you can sell skim milk for any amount of money is ridiculous. Basically what you've done is you've taken all the nutrients out. It's kind of like the highly processed grains where all you're getting is the white flour. They've taken out all the nutrients from the germ to the vitamins and so forth. They've taken that out and selling that off as a supplement and giving you the leftover highly processed byproduct. And this is what we've done with milk. I mean, 2% milk, what a joke. I mean, skim milk, it shouldn't be allowed to even be sold. I mean, it has no nutrient value essentially, especially if it's been pasteurized and homogenized.
You would die then if you knew my background, but I don't do that anymore. I know better now. But oh my goodness,
Right.
I survived on that. And I would take skim milk and add water to it because I thought it was bad. Oh yeah. Anyway.
Sure.
Yeah. But that's typical. That's what you're taught,
But
right?
we talk about what a gift a cow is, and my Vandana Shiva is a physicist and food activist from India, and Hillary Clinton was over there during the Clinton years visiting and stopped to see Vandana Shiva. And Indians worship cows. I mean, they've got the largest cow herd in the world in India. They just don't eat many of them. although they do eat some, but they don't. There's a lot of vegetarians over there. And Vandana Shiva told Hillary Clinton, she said, our cow dung is worth more than your Wall Street stocks. What an insult, right? I mean, if you were Hillary Clinton, you would think, you're telling me that my Wall Street stocks aren't worth crap? Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. And when you think about that and put that into context, why do they worship the cow in India? Well, it's because the cow is where food comes from. It's the dairy, it's the milk, it's the butter, it's the cheese, it's the beast of burden that pulls the plow. And the manure is what adds health to the soil, which then in turn makes our food more nutritious. Now that's way more valuable than your Wall Street stocks, no questions asked. I mean, no argument there. But the cow really has become an important part of society over the tens of thousands of years. And I just finished reading a book written about the cattle industry in Africa, and it's called Wanted Dead and Alive Cattle, right? And what I learned in reading this book, which I knew some of already, but this book was seriously informative, is how much a cow is critical to their survival and to their society. And so when we went over and colonized the continent, the British colonization, they did what they call an enclosure act, and they built fences, which prevented the nomadic tribes from moving their animals from north to south with the seasons and living with their cows and living off of their cows. And they eat the meat from the cows as well, unlike Vandana Shiva's culture. But what they would do when they came back through the area, they would always plant their garden where the cows spent the night. And of course, lots of manure and urine, right? So now we have a much better soil health, and the people, had these beautiful broad faces with big bright smiles and well-developed bone structure because they were eating really well. And this is the thing that Sally Fallon brought to my attention with the Weston A. Price stuff. And so this was really interesting in the book. They talk about this young lady that's an African native, and they said, if you could have anything that you wanted, anything, you get a wish, you can have anything in the world that you want, what would it be? And she said, I would want a cow. And of course, they're thinking, what? You don't want a free shopping day at Walmart or whatever? And no, if I had anything I wanted, it would be a cow. And they said, no. See, they just don't understand how important a cow is to the culture. And so the other question was, okay, we're going to give you a second chance. Anything you want. Now, I want you to think about it. You can have anything you want. What would it be? And she said, can I have 2 cows? So the cow,
I love it.
The cow is so important. And for people, and the vegetarians or the vegans or the alternative meat people, to say cows are a problem, they are just so seriously misinformed.
I am just now really fully understanding just how important the cow is. And that's primarily what I eat now is cow. So
well, and a cow has a rumen, and it's this amazing gift that they can ferment foods that are unedible to us. Grass, we can't eat grass. We'd starve to death if we had to eat grass. But a cow can eat grass and turn it into protein and fat, which is so important for our diet. So that's the gift that we've been given, is the cow, and we should really elevate them. And they're very important, and we should treat them well.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And it's been a pleasure speaking with you. And I'm so happy to hear that you are healthy and well and really promoting the cow and doing your best to do what needs to be done now. And for all those who didn't catch Sean's meeting with Mike right before I did this podcast, check that out, because it's very informative. And I think for some of y'all, it's going to be very shocking what you hear, but I think it's something we need to hear. So please be sure to check out the interview with Sean and Mike. It was really great. And thank you, Mike, for joining us.
Thanks to you, Amber. Bye.
Bye.